Rabbi Rand, it's a wonderful opportunity for me to see you, even though you're in Yerushalayim.
Which is in lockdown, unfortunately.
Can you update us on the
Yeah.
state of Corona in Israel?
The numbers, according to the reports, thank God, have started going down since the enforced lockdown has began, which started just around Rosh Hashanah time. They started implementing, and right before Sukkot, they got into a more aggressive sort of lockdown. And it does seem like numbers are steadily going down. They're still much higher than we would like, but thank God they're on the way down.
I know that you're a Rabbi, a teacher, an educator, but you're also a family therapist.
Yes, correct.
Do you see increase of cases that people turn to you due to Corona situation?
Definitely. I the way I say it is that I'm getting the actual case is not termed a corona case. It's an ongoing situation, but the corona clearly aggravates the situation, no question about it. Those people that are suffering with anxiety and paranoia, those people that are unfortunately having marriage issues, and also the depression. Clearly, it's been increased. The problems the issues have been increased because of this very, very unusual situation, which is already over a half a year going.
And it also probably can be a trigger as well for person to first time experience depression or worry, anxiety. And
Yes.
when people come to you, especially in the current situation where really there is no simple answer, there is no light at the end of the tunnel that we can say, oh, very soon we're going to have a vaccine, or very soon we're going to have this and that, it's going to go away. So what do you say to people when come to you and they seek your guidance, your help?
Look, the first thing is that the validation of the reality of the situation is very important. It really is it's a real issue. It's a real issue, and it's hitting us in so many different ways, as I'm sure you yourself are aware of. This is a worldwide, international problem, which is hitting all of us in so many different ways. So you have the physical health, you have the emotional mental health, you certainly have the financial situation, and as you know, Rav, that the main clientele that I deal with are students, are the post high school, the college students, anywhere from 18 till and up, and the studies are constantly being interrupted, especially, by the way, our community that is not so connected with internet and even with Zoom. The many institutions here do not encourage Zoom, do not use Zoom. So we're talking about phone lines and less. Very, very difficult, very challenging. So that's certainly getting in the way. The other point that the validation of the reality is very important and helps a lot. The other thing which helps is what they say in Hebrew, the Tzarat Rabim, is that it does, while a person is dealing with his own personal issues, it does help him to hear that this is not just about him. It's not his own issue. It's not something that he has to take responsibility for. So often, a lot of the job is taking responsibility for the situation. Here, it's not a matter of taking responsibility for the situation. It's taking responsibility for how do you deal with the situation.
So we understand that there are financial, physical, and emotional components that may contribute to the state of anxiety and
Yeah.
fears, depression.
Yes.
But there is one dimension that I think that exclusively yours, I'm talking about exclusively not just as a mental health professional, but as a spiritual guide, the person who's teaching Torah, Jewish wisdom, um, which is spiritual dimension. And in our history,
Right.
not the first time that we're going through difficult, horrific times, not the first time. So, heck, can you share with us how to overcome it, uh, from the spiritual perspective?
I'll tell you, really, Rabbi, I think you're raising such a good point that I would like to believe I could throw the question back. If survivors of the Holocaust, they should live and be well, and if people that have come out of communist Russia, such as yourself and others, I really think, now that you mention it, I never thought of this before, but it would really be so helpful for those people to teach us, the younger generation, how to get through tough times. I know that towards the beginning of the pandemic, what is the what's his name, the Russian refusenik that came to Israel
Sharansky,
and
Sharansky,
was in
who
charge
played
of
chess. He
Sharansky.
probably spoke about chess in Soviet jail.
Yeah, did you hear his video? He gave a video towards the beginning of he had about 5 ideas of how to get through it, and I thought that was beautiful. I looked at it, I showed it to other people.
Your own mother should be healthy and well for many years. Is a Holocaust survivor who went through Mauthausen, and I believe that you visited Mauthausen together
Yes,
with me
yes.
and separately together with her.
That's correct. Well, I don't know if
Correct.
you and I did Mauthausen. I think I was on a different trip, but
Oh,
I did. I had the honor of going to Mauthausen with my mother. She should be well,
right.
and my sister, Dr. Faye. It was
Yes.
incredible. It was really amazing.
So, what's the lesson that your mother may share with you?
So my mother, who you correctly bring to light, is one of my model roles for the concept of happiness. And I think that the line that I've heard from her more than any other line are the words, and I'm quoting, "I am so lucky." And then she'll follow through with talking about her children, about her family, about how she's doing in life right now. And those words, "I am so lucky," and really just appreciating what she's gotten and what she's either accomplished or achieved, and how, the Hebrew words are sameach bechelko, right? Ezeo ashir sameach bechelko, and I think that's probably the most oft mentioned line that she would say is, "I am so lucky," and I think that's probably one of my dogmas to keep a smile on my face.
I want to share with you something that I remember your sister, Dr. Faye Zakheim, who's a professor on NYU School of Sociology. We
Yeah.
once were sitting on Friday night together. Your mother was present, and somehow Dr. Faye Zakheim mentioned that while she was there, maybe it was on the visit with you, I think she mentioned your brother Yaakov, am I right? Who's a doctor,
Correct.
epidemiologist, actually. He's an expert in pandemic. So I believe that he was also, and there were Austrian children that came to Mauthausen, a class, and they suddenly saw a Holocaust survivor, and they turned to your mother and asked her, "Can you tell us what is the most memorable event that took place?" Do you remember this?
No, I wasn't there for that. No,
No, not that time.
no.
And they asked, can you tell us something most memorable?
Wow, I want
And
to hear this.
they probably expected she's gonna share some horrible, horrible experiences that continue to be like a nightmare, and she cannot just forget them. And they will share with them something they were like willing and ready to, whatever it is, to hear the horrific story of death camp. And suddenly your mother said, when they took us, in the early morning, they took us in, I don't know, cars or whatever it is, in trucks as workers, and they brought us to Vienna from Mauthausen, which is a couple of hours of drive, for forced labor in Vienna. And I remember that when we were passing a bridge, and I looked at the sunrise, and I saw it was
Wow.
so beautiful. It was
Wow.
so beautiful. So they were astonished. And your
Wow.
brother Yaakov, I believe Dr. Fay also said, he was surprised to hear that. And she just shared this. I don't know if my comment on that is appropriate or not, but please comment on my comment. And then sitting at the table with everybody, I said, even though your mother, of course, was sitting there, I said that's probably the choice that your mother made to remember. Because
Right.
when things are
Right.
happening and you have pain and darkness and horrific situations around you, you may choose to see good even in the darkness. And yet then you
Right.
may choose to remember it. You may choose to remember it, even though there were painful moments and horrific and terrible moments. But some people decide to think and remember something painful and bad, and they continue to relive it. And that is the essence of trauma. And some
Right. I think
people,
that
some other people, like your mother, has an art of living. And in a way, maybe this is a way to say you're not what you think. What you think about. If your mother, even in a concentration camp, this is what she's thinking about. And when people ask her, what do you remember about Mauthausen? And she decided to remember the beauty of Vienna at the sunrise, the view that she saw from a bridge. That is a tremendous art of living.
amazing.
What do
Amazing.
you say?
It goes so well with the fact that she mentions to us that her father, my grandfather, well, who I never saw, he died shortly after, really right after the war. He came down with typhus, and you were there at the cemetery, right? You know that story with how he got buried in Mauthausen. But in any event, one of the memories that my mother will tell us again regularly on the death march. We're talking about the 2-3 week march from Vienna to the camp of Mauthausen, and she remembers her father singing the Hallel, because it was Rosh Chodesh, and like we're doing today, this week during Sukkot, where we say Hallel every day, and he was singing Hallel while they were marching to Mauthausen and barely staying alive. What's interesting is that my uncle, who's also alive and also very, very into the happiness, really, my uncle Avrumi, told me that he went to a survivors reunion about 60 years or so after the war, and he meets people that he has no idea who they are, but they clearly were in the same group. Two irreligious ladies, and they said to him, not knowing who he was, that one of the things that they remember is on this death march, singing, a man singing the Jewish songs on the way, and that was. It turned out that that was his father singing that Hallel. Isn't that amazing? That also has made an impression on different people. We don't even know who they are, but that's different things that they remember about this absolutely terrible experience. But they're remembering the singing as they're marching.
It means that it was your grandfather who offered courage or encouragement by his
Yeah.
actions. It was not just his personal choice for himself and his life, but the fact that he was living in singing. In other words, he was alive, marching and singing. It gave strength.
Right.
And that memory is
Right.
remembered 50 years later, 60 years later.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Absolutely. Amazing.
Another thing from this story, I remember when we were in a bus with rage students, we had like maybe 40, 50 students with us on the bus. It was a full bus of people. And your sister, Dr. Faye Zakheim, took the mic and she was sharing these stories with us. And as we were driving, it was a river. I don't know which river was there. It was a river. It already was in Mauthausen. And it was like about 3 hours drive. Of course, they were marching, sick and tired and beaten people. It took them a long time. And then she says, look at these cafe restaurants on the bank of the river. Continue, please.
Yeah. I think it's the Danube. I think it was the Danube River. I think so.
And do you remember what the comment was of your mother on that? When she was on this march,
Yeah.
she was very much in pain, seeing people who were silent and like they couldn't care less. They were
That's right.
not paying attention to this wounded, beaten, facing their death almost people who were pushed to walk up the mountain to the Mauthausen, where they actually were working to
passing
death.
them. Right. They were passing them as they were sitting at the cafe.
And these people were enjoying life, drinking, cafe. They were drinking, cups of coffee. Yeah. That was going on.
Yep.
So she said when she comes back, now it's her turn to drink coffee.
Yep.
She wants to go to this place to drink coffee. She's taking a revenge.
Every time she went to Mauthausen, she made sure to have coffee at that cafe. And when we went, when she took us, we stopped at that cafe. Yep.
There is something I probably would be guilty if I will not mention that you, I'm sure, know this, but I think our viewers should know about one of the greatest miracles of my life. You know what happened then? When we came to the museum, well, it's a museum today, Mauthausen is a museum. I remember from my grandfather who fought the war, Yakov, it's actually brother of my grandfather. My grandfather passed away when I was very young and he was like a grandfather to me. So he actually was, he said, the first Soviet soldier entering Mauthausen. I know that American soldiers liberated, but he was a representative of the Soviet army. And he was the first Soviet officer entering Mauthausen and speaking to Jewish prisoners in Yiddish. But so Mauthausen was also, it's a special place in my heart because it's part of my family's legacy in terms of liberating the camp. But your sister was guiding us. And then someone took the guidance from her. The guide, in other words, the Austrian person was appointed by the museum to lead us through the place. I was disappointed. And I thought, like, why do I need him telling me about what Mauthausen is? I don't know who he is. I don't know what his parents did during the war. I don't know where he's coming from, right? I would rather, of course, your sister to guide me and tell me what it is. But that's the rule of the game. And he was continuing speaking. He was pretty good, pretty knowledgeable. And at certain point, he brings us to the cemetery, and suddenly your sister tells, "Here's the grave of my grandfather," and we see it's a mass grave of tens of thousands of people, as we understand, buried there. But there's only one grave with a name, only one grave with a name. And she comes here and she tells this story. This is my grandfather who was liberated, but later on, a few days later, died from typhus in a hospital. And the American soldiers brought him back here and buried him in this mass grave with other prisoners who died at the time or just prior to liberation. And we later on, the family later on came back, somehow found the place and put this monument here. And I really want to rebury my grandfather either in Israel or America, because the family is here or there. No one lives here. Why is my grandfather's here alone in Austria? And as she was saying it, do you know what happened? Do you know what the Austrian said? You want to say it?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us. Yeah. Yeah.
So he almost, like with tears, he was almost crying with tears on his eyes. He said, please don't do it. This grave changed my life. He said, because when I was growing up, I was born in Mauthausen. Is a nice, like, small town in the mountains of Austria. And I never knew about Holocaust. It's not something that Austrian people are talking about. And one day when I had to make a choice to go to serve in the army or to make a community or national service, I decided to go to a local museum and just, here to serve the community. And I became a guide as a community service. And then I started learning something about that I didn't know. And then I realized that my own grandfather was a Nazi. And I looked into his letters or into his story, and I realized that he was a Nazi officer. And I was terrified by where I'm coming from and what can I do to prevent it, these crimes happening in the future. And then one day I came to that very place, this cemetery, this mass grave, and saw one monument with a name. I didn't know who this person was, but it suddenly changed my perspective. There are maybe 100,000 people died here. And when you talk about 100,000 people, you talk about 6 million people, numbers. But when you see one name, it changes your perspective. I looked at this grave and I said, this man, maybe he had children, maybe grandchildren. I don't know anything about him. And here I am, standing 17 years later, seeing you as a granddaughter telling this story. This monument has to be here to educate, to inspire people to see that this is not 100,000 dead. This is 100,000 individuals.
Wow. Wow. Amazing.
And he dedicated his life. He said, it changed my life. I did this because of this grave. I'm an Austrian, but I am here standing for the Jewish people. I'm here speaking to people who support, boycott of Israel. And I am speaking as a friend and ally of the Jewish people who went through the Holocaust. It changed my life.
Wow. Amazing. Just amazing. Amazing.
So, Rabbi Rand, so we understand where you're coming from, and you were raised by both parents, Holocaust survivors. Your mother, who remained a source of happiness and joy, regardless of anything. Right. And your father, who also went through Holocaust.
Yes. Yes, he did. He had a much different story, and I can't say that he was, able to be as happy as my mother was. A different personality. He lost a tremendous. My mother miraculously came out with almost all of her family, which was a miracle. But one thing he did do for us, my father, was the concept of purpose and focus in life. He was rebuilding. He was getting a family back up, and he was going to make sure that his family would be as successful as possible, and extremely focused and determined to rebuild. And thank God, I think that we could say he did a great job at that.
Do you remember your father?
Very well, sure.
Can you say a few words about your father's family? Because I do know your mother, and I do know a little bit about the family, your mother's side. What about your father's side?
My father lost his father at the age of 7. When my father was 7 years old, his father was apparently a victim of the First World War. There was something going on, and I think it was the Russians that brought him into jail and beat him mercilessly, which ultimately brought his, from what I understood from my father, ultimately brought his death. My father was about the age of 27 at the time of the Holocaust. He happened to have been a brilliant person, and he did not. He very much, unlike my mother, did not speak a lot at all about his experiences. Once in a while, he would open up and then shut down again. He had a mother who he loved very much, and he was totally there for her until that last day. They got separated in Auschwitz. And he saw much of his family go on that line that Mengele, Yamach Shemam, separated them. They had no idea when they were being separated, why. As a matter of fact, my father had a coat, and this is one of the stories that he did share with us. He had a coat, and in the lining of the coat, he had sewn in money. He had sewn in money, and he figured, he would take the coat with him in the event that he'd have to bribe soldiers. He would have money to bribe them. They come to Auschwitz and they get separated in the line. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Mengele, the Russia, would separate people upon arrival. The ones that ultimately would go straight to their death went to one line. The ones that he wanted to keep alive and put into labor went into the second line. My father was in one line, and his mother went into the other line. My father had no idea what was going on, but one thing he knew is that he had the coat, and he saw his mother on the other line, and he ran and gave her the coat with the money in it, believing that if she'll need it, she'll be able to use the money to make the payoffs necessary to stay alive for her story. She immediately went to the death, to the ovens, to the gas chambers. He found that out. I don't know. I don't remember when he found it out, but his that for me is a very major symbol of his love and his kibbud of aim for his mother. He lost except for one brother, he lost everybody in the Holocaust. One thing I want to share with you one story, if I may. Okay, in his later years, I'm walking him back from. Now this is very not like him, but it showed me a glimpse of the real him. We It was in his later years, and we're walking back from shul. I was there with my family to spend Pesach with my parents, and we're walking back from shul. And for some reason, Pesach time was the time that he would speak, and he was telling me different stories about what happened in the war. And we were walking quite slowly. First of all, because of his age, and second of all, because he was crying. He was crying a lot, and I took my time with him. Now we should have been home already at least 15, 20 minutes, and my mother is very much on top of him, so she's gonna be waiting at the door to know why we're not home yet. Anyway, we're walking home, and he's crying, and he's telling me different stories, and then he says the following, and I want to share this with you, and I think it's really very apropos for tonight's discussion. He says to me, and this came from nowhere. Rabbi, I can't tell you how it affected me. He stops while he's crying. He stops, and he tells me, "But today is Yom Tov. Today is a holiday, and on holidays we have to be happy." And that was it. And we walk into the house. My mother has no clue of what went on 2 minutes earlier. And I'm standing there, I'm telling you, astonished at the control that this man had. And it allowed me to wonder, how much has he been containing inside his whole life? Because I did not grow up with a crying father, and I did not grow up with a father that was regularly depressed. He was definitely, clearly, um, hurt from the Holocaust. Definitely not speaking, but it let me get a glimpse of what he must have carried on inside of him, and not let anyone see, because he didn't want to hurt the mood and the family that he was bringing up. I thought it was incredible.
It is totally incredible, and I think it's a life-saving skill. It's a tool,
Yeah,
because very
yeah,
often we come home from work, from learning, from whatever it is, and you have wife, you have children waiting for you. And if you're going to bring your emotions or your pains or your doubts of negativity, even you experienced by whatever it is, whatever happened, if you're going to bring it with, you're not doing your job as a husband, right? You need to
yeah.
bring
Right,
happiness home.
right,
So therefore, holiday of
right.
happiness is not just once a year. We need to be happy because we need to be happy. We need to be happy every day of the year, and we need
Yep.
to bring happiness
Yeah,
and
yeah.
share happiness with our loved ones, with our community every single day.
Yeah,
I would even, if
you
I
are
would be
definitely.
even permitted, I want to tell you there was a great rabbi that I learned so much, Rabbi Israel Tauber. He was a Holocaust survivor himself. You heard about him,
Yes.
Rabbi Israel Tauber.
Yeah, I
And
went to his classes.
you went to his classes. I went also to his classes.
Yeah.
I translated to Russian immigrants many of his classes. When he was speaking, he used to
Wow.
come to Sinai Academy. We used to come to him, to Mansfield, to Lakewood, to make seminars with him. One of the thoughts that
Wow.
I read in his book, there is a book called Pirkei Machshova, and there in the last chapter about Sukkot, he writes the following. He says, if you open Torah, you will find prophecy, prediction of exile and destruction. And it says, because when you will enter the land of Israel, what will happen? You know what will happen? Lo avat es Hashem Elokecha b'simcha u'b'tov lev. You did not serve Hashem with happiness. He says, you think that the reason why we were exiled, as rabbis say, is because of baseless hatred among the brothers. The story of Yosef that repeated itself at the time of the second temple and the destruction was because of sinas hinam, hatred for no reason. But he says, if you look deeper in the Torah gives another reason, which is lack of happiness. And if you think that these two reasons are not connected, there is a deep connection. An unhappy person hates himself and hates others. And if you want to
Yeah.
heal yourself and heal your nation and rebuild the temple, you need to choose happiness yourself. You need to do tshuva, you need to repent. And if the cause of exile is lack of happiness, then happiness will bring redemption and peace in the Jewish people.
Yeah. Beautiful. Very beautiful.
So now, without further ado, we had such an amazing discussion so far, but all this was
I love it.
just really to give you a microphone.
I think we covered our bases. I don't think we need
I
to
think
say
now,
anything else.
I think now we need, Baruch Hashem, we are ready to be enlightened by you, please.
I'd rather sit and hear you speak, Rabbi. Okay, I'll make it nice and quick, not to just get the main point across. As you did say, Sukkot is specifically called Zman Simchatenu, and the importance of happiness is definitely something that we need to work on. That maybe that's the first thing that I would like to point out, is that happiness is a skill. It's a choice, and you said that a number of times. I hope that your students that are listening caught those words, because you said it very clearly. Happiness is a choice, and it is not a happening, but it's something that we choose. And of course, I'm certainly not an expert on the field. I'm working on it myself, and I have my better days and my weaker days, but it doesn't bother me, because I understand that it's something that we need to work on. Thank God I have good model roles for it. I would say that I would at least let me make 2 points. One is the positive of what are one of the main things which we can use to connect to happiness, and one is a negative, which is what is something which actually gets in the way. So the first thing is the positive, and the positive is that if you stop to think about it, happiness. Now let me make it clear, and let me know if you agree with me. There's something called pleasure, there's something called excitement, and there's something called fun, but that's not happiness. That's not happiness. Those are nice things, those are good things, but that is not what we call happiness. Is an in an inner feeling of content and satisfaction, and that's what happiness is. And when you stop to think about it, I believe that the number one thing of happiness is what we've gained and what we've achieved. And that's what I said earlier about my mom. She should live and be well. The words "how lucky I am," how lucky I am, and all that's what she just keeps on saying, which is, see how much I have gotten from God and from my life. How much I have gotten. I have a family. I have life. I have health. My mother right now, she should live and be well, is missing part of her foot, and nothing. She's okay. She's just saying, "How lucky am I?" So the idea of fulfillment, of achievement and accomplishment. There's another point of depth to this, and that is that we're told that the acquisition of our own doing, of our own labor, makes us even more happy. That means that if I give you a very nice gift, I assume that you will be happy. If you work for getting the exact same thing, then we know that you'll be even happier. Why? It's all about the feeling of achievement and accomplishment. The more that we can connect to it ourselves, of course, it's all, thank God, from above, but that we can give ourselves the pat on the back of the validation of what we've done. You mentioned family therapist. That's a really important point. A person who is studying, and he has to stop and think, look, how much has he accomplished in the semester? And it took work. It wasn't that way. We're talking about when he puts time into it and studying into it, and he gives up things. He would like to go spend, he or she would like to spend time with their friends, would like to go out and socialize, but they know an important exam is coming up, and they're putting time and effort into it. So they're sacrificing. A father and a mother who are, children are total sacrifice, right? From the time they're, even before, but they're born, but certainly from the time they're born, so much that we have to give to them: time and patience and encouragement, not to mention money. And that is where we feel so much better when we see, thank God, that we have the children that we should hopefully have, and be thankful for it. So the idea of happiness is a matter of achievement and attainment. That's one thing. And it's the more we can identify with that achievement and attainment, then even the happier we are. That's what I would call, tonight's positive point. The negative of what gets in the way of happiness, one of the biggies is worrying. And you and I, Rav, spoke earlier before we went on about what's going on in the world today in general, and there's a lot of worry going on, a lot of confusion of what will be tomorrow. We need to find that strength of understanding how the worry really doesn't help. You know, Anything at all constructive that we can do to help ourselves out, to protect ourselves, constructive is very positive. Worrying, which does not have a constructive follow through, that is damaging, and that gets in the way of happiness, because then we start worrying about how what our situation is. It clouds our mind. It doesn't let us see the achievements and everything that we have. So we have the positive of achievement and accomplishment, and the negative, which gets in the way of that happiness, is worrying. Can I mention one more point, Rabbi? Okay, interestingly enough, this holiday that we're in, I was thinking about this afternoon. I mean, right now we are in Israel. We are at nighttime. It's 9:40 p.m. and we're going into the last day of Sukkot before Simchat Torah. We're in Hoshana Rabbah already, and I was thinking earlier today that interestingly enough, Sukkot really brings both of these points out. Um, the uh, the the season of Sukkot, which is right now at the end of the summer. So the sources tell us very practically, that why one of the reasons why we are saying Zman Simchatenu during Sukkot is because we finished the the winter rain and working in the fields. That is past. The spring cutting and putting the fruit and the wheat out into the field, the wheat to dry, the grains to dry, that's past. The summertime of bringing everything in before the oncoming winter, that is past. That is past. And now a person looks at his storage houses back. Remember that Israel, even today, Israel is primarily an agricultural country where we have high tech and we have agriculture. So right now in the summertime, we've put and certainly in the biblical times, we've put all of our grains and our wheat into the storage houses, and we're looking at a year of achievement and accomplishment, and we are feeling good about ourselves. And that's man simchatenu, is the achievement and accomplishment. At the same time, where do we sit for 7 days in a sukkah? And what is the message of a sukkah? The message is the protection that God gave us in the desert. And Sukkot is a symbol of God's protection for us. A person can't worry when he knows he's being protected, right? That's exactly what will absolve worrying. If you know that someone has your back, then you are not going to worry, right? So really, we have. I just noticed it today. Both of these points are so clear in the holiday. The point of accepting and acknowledging the achievement that God let us get to, and secondly, the point of security. If we're talking about these times, and I wish I could say I'm so ahead of everybody else. I'm not. But when we think about the worrying of the future, if we can connect to the feeling of the security that we were given, if we made it through 40 years of the desert, we're going to make it through this as well. And God should just be able to that every individual, yeah, we should be lucky that every individual one of us should make it through in all arenas of health, of emotional health, and of financial health for sure. Um, but those 2 points, I think, are keys in working towards the feeling of happiness with life.
I want to thank you tremendously for your words, and just maybe to share with your viewers. I remember how Dr. Faye Zakheim said to me that her mother commented, "I'm lucky, like I don't have a leg, or she doesn't have part of the leg." It was
Right.
since the war. It's something happened at the war still.
No. It
No,
happened about 5 years ago.
I see. I
No, it
see.
happened about 8 years ago. 8 years ago.
I see. I see. What? And she said, "Do you know? It is because she has, I believe, an assistant or certain help." And she says, "I'm so
Right.
happy because now I have this." So you can see the world half empty, right? Half empty cup.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
I don't have it. So your mother chooses to see what she has and celebrate even as a
Yeah.
result of not having something as part of her body. It's a tremendous
Yeah.
lesson of
Yeah.
appreciating what you have. May Hashem help us to appreciate that we, on this day, remember God's protection. We remember the clouds of glory. And you said so beautifully, if God protected us 40 years in desert and actually 2,000 years in exile, despite Mauthausen and Gulag and pogroms and persecutions, and we are still here today. Imritz Hashem, God willing, it will be brighter tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Amen.